this moment, Rene felt sure they were made of jitterbugs. His knees trembled, and he could barely keep his teeth from chattering. Sticky was scrubbing his glasses so hard they squeaked, and Constance had her eyes squeezed tightly shut, unconvincingly feigning sleep. Even Kate squirmed a little. The guard seemed to be taking an awfully long time. When she finally came out, her smile hadn't faded in the least. Renee just had time to wonder whether this meant she did or did not have something to hide. And then she was at the car saying, "Welcome, kids. You're all clear and right on time. Please drive across the island gate. I'll radio for them to let you in." As Rhonda rolled the window up and put gear forward again, all four children released deep breaths. Then they passed over the long bridge toward their fate. After their suitcases had been unfolded from the station wagon and Rhonda had signed a form and bidden them farewell, the children were left to wait in a loading area by the bridge gate. Their escorts would collect them shortly. The gate guard said, in the meantime, they were to step aside, please, as this was a busy area and not the sort of place for children to be underfoot. Workers in white uniforms were hauling crates from a nearby storage shed and loading them onto a big truck. And they did indeed seem very busy, tirelessly loading and stacking until it made your back hurt just to watch them. The children moved off the side of the loading area, dragging their suitcases behind them. Rhonda had packed changes of clothes for each of them, including outfits she had sewn overnight to fit Constance's diminutive size. They hadn't much to do or look at to occupy themselves, even though they very much wanted to be occupied to take their minds off their nervousness. There was only the guardhouse, the storage shed, and the loading area, all of which were apparently off limits, and a stone wall that blocked their view of the harbor. After twiddling their thumbs a few minutes, the children stacked their suitcases and took turns standing on them to peek over the wall. Constance required all 4 suitcases. The others managed with only 2. They were interested to discover some activity beneath the bridge. More workers in white uniforms navigating a boat among the pilings. The workers carried oversized wrenches, cranks, and other tools, and were using them to make adjustments on some unseen apparatus beneath the water's surface. Like the workers loading the crates onto the truck, those in the boat seemed earnestly intent upon their work. They spoke, but rarely, and then in quiet tones, as if they had some great reverence for the task before them. Must be the turbines, Renee thought, climbing down from the suitcases. Sticky and Kate had come to the same conclusion, but Constance wondered aloud what in the world those people could possibly be doing down there. Were they trying to fix the water? Renee wasn't sure whether or not Constance was joking. He had started to answer regardless when his voice was drowned out by the rumbling of an engine. The workers had finished loading the big truck. 2 men in suits had climbed into the front as the gate opened for them. They waved cheerfully to the children and drove away over the bridge. "Did you see that?" Constance cried. "They're wearing those shock watches. The bridge guards, too. Have you noticed?" "Lower your voice," Kate hissed. "Are you crazy? Of course we noticed." Constance was indignant. But there was no time for flow-blown argument to develop, for just then the children's escorts arrived. The escorts were dressed identically in blue pants, snappy white tunics, and blue sashes, but they could never be mistaken for each other. One was stocky, red-haired, and a young man with icy blue eyes and a nose so skinny and sharp it resembled a knife. The other was a powerfully built young woman with greasy brown ponytail and small, piggish eyes of an indeterminate color. They introduced themselves as Jackson and Jilson. Renee extended his hand. "My name is..." "There'll be time for that," Jilson said, turning away. "Let's get moving. We'll take you to your rooms first, so you can dump your luggage." Surprised, Renee lowered his hand. He knew it was Jilson who had been so rude. She and Jackson hadn't offered to help with their suitcases either, but he still felt foolish. "She's a nice one, isn't she?" Kate whispered. The children were led up a long gravel path toward the Institute buildings. They crossed the broad stone plaza and a modest rock garden, then waited as Constance shook the gravel from her shoes. At last they were taken into the student dormitory, where, since the girls' room lay at one end of the long stone corridor and the boys at the other, they were forced to separate. Renee and Sticky's room, aside from being very clean and tidy, was rather what they would have expected. Bunk beds, 2 desks and chairs, but no bookshelves, a wardrobe, a radiator, a large television cabinet, well, that was unexpected, and a window overlooking the plaza. Renee went to the window. Beyond the plaza lay the glittering channel, brilliant in the sunlight and choppy with white-capped waves, and beyond that a wooded shore where Mr. Benedict's telescopes were going to be hidden. The children could send their Morse code messages from this very window. Renee's stomach fluttered. His mind might understand he was a secret agent now, but his body still had a hard time believing it. Jackson leaned against the door jamb. "If you need anything, ask an executive. You can always tell an executive by the uniform: blue pants, white tunic, blue sash. The executives run the show here. A lot of us are former students who did so well as messengers that Mr. Curtin hired us on. Don't get us confused with messengers, though. Messengers wear tunics and a slash too, but their pants are striped. They're just students like yourselves, but they're the top of the class, and they have special privileges, secret privileges, I might add. Anyway, you'll learn all about this soon enough. Right now, just get yourselves unpacked and watch some TV if you want." He switched the television on for them. "You'll have your orientation tour in an hour, and then you'll meet Mr. Curtin." "Who's Mr. Curtin?" said Renee, who thought it best to give the impression of knowing as little as possible. "The less you know, the less people suspected you, and perhaps the more they told you." Jackson sneered, then forced the sneer into a smile. He looked like a red-headed crocodile. "I keep forgetting how ignorant you kids are when you get here. Mr. Curtin's my boss. He's the founder of the Institute and the reason we're all here. Got it?" It was clear Jackson was the sort of young man who considers himself rather smarter than he is, and who is naturally cruel but thinks himself a decent fellow. When the smaller boys didn't answer him quickly enough, he snapped, "Do you understand me, or don't you? You speak English, right?" The boys nodded. "Good. I'll see you in an hour." When Jackson had gone, Sticky switched off the television. "Did you hear that? Messengers. We know what that means, don't we?" "We better find the girls," Renee said. "We're right here," said a muffled voice from above them. A ceiling panel slid aside, and Kate Weatherall's head appeared through the gap. "There aren't any support beams over your bunk beds, so one of you move that chair over, will you? I'm going to lower Constance down." "What are you doing, anyway?" The boys had been on edge already, but the sound of an unexpected voice directly overhead Renee had thrown up his hands as if to ward off a blow, and Sticky had tried unsuccessfully to hide behind his suitcase. With a sheepish grin, Renee slid a chair under the gap. A moment later, Constance's tiny feet appeared and the rest of her body, as Kate, hanging her by her legs from the beam, lowered her carefully to the chair. The boys helped her to the floor, while Kate secured her rope to the beam and climbed down to join them. "Don't bother thanking me," she said to Constance, who was scowling and brushing insulation from her clothes. Why should I thank you?" "You dragged me up into the ceiling, through the heating vent, crawling through spider webs in the dark, across all these hard boards saying, 'Don't put your knee there, you'll fall through and break your neck,' and 'Don't breathe so loudly, someone will hear you,' until my heart's in my throat and my knees are killing me. You expect me to thank you?" "Not at all," said Kate. "I was happy to do it." Constance's eyes seemed ready to pop from her head. "Did you ever consider just walking down the corridor?" Sticky asked. "I figured we'd better have a hidden entrance," she replied, "in case we needed to meet secretly. I'll bet those executives are always patrolling the place. I don't like them a bit. Jilson made fun of my bucket, and she kept calling us little squirts and bossing us around. I thought Constance was going to bite her leg off." All right, we'll stop right there. Do, 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 do.